Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. In today's episode, going to be reacting to some Frank Lampard comments surrounding recent criticism of Kai Havertz. We'll get into that. That's really interesting and I have some strong opinions on that myself. Also, Callum Hudson-Odoi staying in the January transfer window, but also picking up an injury before the Krasnodar game. We'll get into that as well. And finally, reacting to some team news ahead of tonight's Champions League game at home to Krasnodar. But before we get into any of that good stuff, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. So let's get into it firstly with Kai Havertz. Frank Lampard in his pre-match press conference, these comments surrounding Kai Havertz and recent criticism of the midfielder came from Matt Law in the Telegraph. Full article link in the description box below. As you can see here, headline: Frank Lampard, Kai Havertz will be one of the best players in world football. Let's go into his comments and quotes and then I'll give you my reaction to them. So firstly, he said he's fitting in really well and he had really strong symptoms of COVID. He was very ill and struggling for quite a while. Not all the players have had it like that. Some have been symptom free, so we had to factor that in. That's why it took him 2 or so weeks for him to start a game once he returned from COVID. Going into it when he fell ill, his form was fantastic. It came on the back of him playing some really good stuff, playing in the 8 role, the advanced midfield role, and I was delighted for him because you could see he was enjoying it. Then COVID cut that short. Long term, I've got absolutely no worries about Kai, and in fact the opposite. I know he's going to be a huge player for this football club in the Premier League. He has all the attributes, all the personality, all the attitude, and he's going to be an absolutely top class player. And Frank finished off by saying, I think there are a lot of quick reactions to how some people analyse new signings. Some of the best players who have graced the Premier League have come to this country and found it hard for quite a long time to get used to it. I think Kai has actually been very good and COVID made it difficult for us, but he will be a top player for us. He is a top player. I absolutely agree with what Frank has to say. I think there has been a reaction. I think a lot of it comes from maybe outsiders, and I think it says a lot about sort of how well Chelsea are doing at the moment in terms of form and winning games comfortably, that this is the most people can bring up in terms of negativity surrounding Kai, and context is everything. And it's so reflective of the short-term mentality of modern football. I think a natural comparison to me when I think of Lampard and a new signing coming in and struggling at first is, of course, Christian Pulisic last season. I think the comparison is pretty strong in terms of, and even Pulisic I don't think truly fits because Kai has actually, I think, played a little bit better than the first few weeks of Christian Pulisic's Chelsea career. He struggled to adapt, but look at Christian Pulisic now, or at least since the injuries recently, was flying at the back end of last season. So that's one thing there. I mean, there was so much overreaction to Pulisic not getting minutes. Then he broke into the first team and became one of Chelsea's most important and best players. So I think you need to factor that in as well. Also, Kai's age. I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Chelsea did not buy Kai Havertz for 3 months. They did not buy him for 9 months. He is 21 years old. He is still such a young player, as young as the likes of Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, younger than them as well, younger than Tammy, and Reece James and those players. He's in that ilk, and we give the time to those players. We should give the time to Kai Havertz as well. He's going to be a long-term player for Chelsea. We hope, a bit like when we signed Eden Hazard, he will be at the club for 7 to 8 years. I think people love to make instant, like, strong reactions on football now and love to look, especially at younger players. I see this so often. I see this with Tammy as well. People just assume players are like this and they are the finished article at 21, and that's the way they're going to be. They're not going to get any better than that. There's such a stupid reaction to a player, and especially a young player with so much potential, who, as Lampard pointed out, I think COVID is such a big thing in terms of him. Apparently he got it quite bad, and in terms of match fitness and sharpness and being ready for an intense game at Chelsea, it's quite clearly put him back a little bit. And you need to understand that, you know, I think people as well constantly look at footballers like they're robots and they can just go out there like on FIFA and just perform 10 out of 10 every week. These things are going to affect anyone. They're going to affect even high level professional athletes as well. So that's something to take into consideration as well. And as I've discussed before, stats show Havertz gets better in the second half of the season. We've seen that throughout his career so far. So I think the same will be the case for Chelsea. It's about adapting to a new league, a new life, a new country, a new culture, not being the big fish in a small pond. You know, that Leverkusen team was built around Kai Havertz. That's not the same at Chelsea now. We have so many areas players to attack currently and so many strong players on our team. It's not the same as Hakim Ziyech, 27 years old when he arrives at Chelsea. He's basically a fully formed player in the prime of his career. That is not Kai Havertz. Kai has got a long way to go. And it's just about patience, isn't it? Unfortunately, that's something that just isn't available now, at least for many people in football. They just want instant gratification. They want players to turn up and to be 10 out of 10. We made a lot of signings this summer, and to expect each and every one of them to instantly click, most of them, luckily for Chelsea, have. Edouard Mendy, Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell, Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech. A lot of them have worked, but Kai, it's going to take a little bit longer, and I'm sure he will grow into a brilliant player. It's just about having that patience. I think most people do, and I actually think, as Lampard has pointed out, we've seen some really good signs from him so far this season. Even if he hasn't been hitting top form yet, he will hit top form in a Chelsea shirt eventually. I think it's just about giving him that time. I think he's in a good club at the moment, Chelsea. There's a lot more certainty around this season and the formation and the setup, and I think that will benefit Kai in the long run. I actually think tonight's game, if he starts, could be a really good opportunity to find some form once again. Let me know your opinions on Kai Havertz, maybe recent struggles, understanding the criticism. Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's unfair? Lampard's comments, let me know in the comments below. Next is around Callum Hudson-Odoi and, of course, getting that injury. But before we learned about that injury picked up on Sunday in training that ruled him out of the game tonight, this was from David Ornstein in The Athletic about sort of any worries and concerns about him leaving the club in January. This comes from Simon Johnson in Ornstein's report in The Athletic. Chelsea will ignore any offers to loan or buy Callum Hudson-Odoi when the transfer window opens next month. Hudson-Odoi was left out of the Chelsea squad that beat Leeds 3-1 at Stamford Bridge on Saturday. The winger was also not included in the 18 for Tottenham's visit to Stamford Bridge the previous Sunday. Good news, I think that Hudson-Odoi, based on his minutes in the Champions League, where he's been picking up most of his minutes recently, I think has shown that he's absolutely part of Lampard's plans. It's such a shame Hakim Ziyech gets that injury and then instantly after Hudson-Odoi gets an injury as well, because you felt this was the perfect opportunity not only for Hudson-Odoi to start tonight against Krasnodar at Stamford Bridge, but also potentially impress enough to get into the squad and maybe even the starting 11 in the Premier League games coming up. We've got a midweek game against Wolves after the Everton game, and it's such a shame for Hudson-Odoi because I think he's actually been in really impressive form. I think it just shows the squad depth that Lampard has, the impressive options he has at the moment, that a player like Hudson-Odoi doesn't make the first team squad. I mean, Christian Pulisic is on the bench in his place, but he comes off the bench and scores against Leeds. So it's very hard for players at the moment, especially on the fringes, to break into this very impressive and now settled Chelsea starting 11, But as we've seen with Olivier Giroud, as we've seen with other players like Kovacic, you can break back into his side. And I actually think when Hudson-Odoi has got those starts in the Champions League, scoring against Krasnodar, scoring against Rennes, a very good goal, and also I think he impressed against Sevilla despite not scoring, I think those things will be taken into account by Frank Lampard. And hopefully this injury isn't that bad and he can come back pretty soon, because I think he's got a good chance to play a little bit more now. Ziyech may be out for a few weeks. We've spoken a lot about Callum Hudson-Odoi and sort of his future at Chelsea, sort of the struggle of getting into the first team ahead of the likes of Christian Pulisic, also Timo Werner playing more on the left now instead of up front, and also Hakim Ziyech. Of course, things can change very quickly. I also think, similar in terms of talking about Kai Havertz, another player, when you actually look at the age of Callum Hudson-Odoi, has got so long to go in his career, and I think, once again, people making firm judgments on players when they haven't even grown yet and have still got so long to go in terms of their development. So I think another player that I still think can have a great career at Chelsea and I actually think has been impressing recently. Let me know your opinions on Hudson-Odoi. How much of a setback do you think this injury will be? Please let me know in the comments below. And finally, team news ahead of tonight. I didn't do my team selector yesterday, especially based on the type of game it is. It's a bit of a dead rubber, but also Lampard confirming 2 players to start. Both Billy Gilmour and Kepa Arrizabalaga will be in the starting 11 tonight against Krasnodar. This game is a bit of a blessing for Frank Lampard to have at the moment, basically a dead rubber game where he can freely rotate, bring in fringe players to impress, freshen up the team, but also rest key players as we go into the intense Christmas period over the next couple of weeks in the Premier League. It's going to be interesting to see because, as we know, the strength of squad we have this year, there are still some exciting players to be on the pitch tonight. I think the likes of Christian Pulisic will likely start. Tammy Abraham will probably come back into the team. Kai Havertz, I think, could start as well. Billy Gilmour, of course, great to see such a great young prospect come back into the team. We know how highly Frank Lampard rates him, so great to see him back in the picture in the first team squad, and hopefully he'll impress as well. I think Jorginho, as you can see on screen now, this is my team, my predicted lineup for tonight. I do think, obviously, the back 5 will be completely rotated. Kepa, Dave, Christensen, Rudiger and Emerson. The back 4 that played last week played pretty well. It would be nice to finish off the group strongly, continue this momentum, especially in front of home fans at the Bridge once again. win, make it 5 wins potentially out of 6 in the group, which is a really impressive return based on the start of this group, based on what we hoped we would do in this group, and obviously confirming top spot last week is about having that rotation now. Let me know your thoughts as well on the return of Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal. Apparently he's been training well recently. As I say, a bit of a dead rubber game, not much pressure on it. Good chance for players who haven't got minutes recently to impress. Let me know your thoughts on the game tonight in the comments below. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again